All right, today we're going to talk about how to paint blood. A lot of figures should have blood spatter, paint, bloody details, gore. We're talking about Ares, we're talking about Wolverine, we're talking about zombies. We're talking about people that just get into a fight. John Wick, Captain America, Iron Man. These are all things that we've seen in movies and all things we've seen depicted in different media, but we really don't get to see that with action figures. I doubt you're ever going to see an action figure that's all bloodied up on a shelf. Maybe some of the stuff that NECA does with Aliens and Predator. I mean, we've seen some of that stuff with Predator, but again, we're talking about a non-human character with green neon blood. So it's a little bit different than seeing, a bloody edition of Ares on the shelf. It's not going to happen. You might get something in a San Diego Comic Con exclusive where it's aimed at the adult collector, but I doubt you're going to actually get it aimed at kids and aimed at retail. No one's going to want that. Target's not going to want that sitting on their shelf. It just is what it is. So I'm going to show you a couple things on how to make bloody patterns and spray overlays to work. One technically you can use if you really wanted to is you could just get a airbrush gun and then just spray on that. I don't like that. If you look close, I have spatter. There's blood spatter on there. It's on the helmet. It's like an impact actually occurred, like a sharp object of some sort, and then you're getting spray back of the actual blood itself. Look up, Google blood spatter. You'll see blood spatter patterns and how things fall and how things work. You can actually kind of tell how things should look a little bit better if you do a little bit of research. But for a figure like this, I want him to be saturated and covered in blood based on the character and who he is anyway. So I did a little bit of research on that, but I figured spatter is going to happen, but why would the spatter happen? He comes with this giant ass axe, and he comes with this giant sword. He comes with this knife over here too, but out of these weapons, these things are going to get dirty. These things are going to get some blood spray back. So what do I use to paint blood? Do I just use red paint? Nope. This is what I use. I use a technical from Citadel called Blood for the Blood God. This paint is the best blood type simulated paint that I can find. It is thicker, it is sticky, it doesn't dry that way, it dries like any other acrylic based paint, but this thing when it goes on is a little tough to work with, which is fine because that's what I want. The cool thing about this is it actually simulates blood enough that you can get both the type of bright blood or dark blood depending on where it's coming out of, whether it's an artery or a vein, kind of depending on how much you layer on when you're actually doing the blood pattern designs. So if you look at Ares, you can see some of it has that brighter blood, and then some of it is going to have more of the darker. There's certain areas that it just kind of works, and you can even mix in other colors with this stuff of like browns and everything where it's more of a dry blood color. The cool thing about this stuff is that it actually stays wet looking. It's a gloss paint that stays wet looking. So you see, it looks like it's fresh blood constantly. Drips work really well. It actually layers up and leaves a little bit of an extra thing. It doesn't just lay flat. It looks like blood dripped off of a spike onto his pants. I did a little bit less on the back because this guy's going to be facing front, fighting enemies head on and getting covered that way. Why would he have blood spatter on his back? So the cool thing is you can do smears. So what I do is I do a spatter and then I just smear it. I could do it with my paintbrush. I could do it with my finger. I wear gloves when I do it so that I don't get fingerprints in the paint on the action figure itself. So it looks like blood is just kind of smeared on him. In the grooves, drips, spatter here. His face is pretty good. Showing that he's got a ton of blood drips and spatter and all that. Notice this is somebody else's blood. This isn't battle damage to Ares. This is somebody else's. So let's talk about the impact weapon. I'll show you how to do the spatter in a minute. When you're taking a brush and you're putting this on, what you're doing is you're figuring out where is my impact, and we're talking somewhere in this general area here. he hit someone in the middle part of his sword, someone big, and it spattered out. So what you're doing is and same thing with his axe, you're painting in a way where it's wet in that area, and it's going to spatter outward from there. It's not going to be consistent blood red all along the blade itself. If you do that, it works, but it's not going to be what you're trying to achieve as far as an actual impact. It would be more of, okay, he's carrying it now down and it's just dripping, which is kind of what I did with the axe. I just wanted him to have the axe carried down after the impact was made and killed someone in battle, and now it's just dripping down. Hands are going to cover a ton. I mean, look at his hands. This stuff is just dripping off the sword onto him, because that's exactly how it would go in real life. You have to kind of consider that stuff when you're painting a custom action figure, because you try to keep everything as realistic as possible. Especially if you're selling custom action figures, customers are going to want that. They're going to want realism. So the fact that he is dripping, you know, when he's holding the sword up like this on display, as if he just killed someone, and it's dripping down his hands, that's what someone's going to want on their shelf. They're not going to want something unrealistic. So you got to saturate the hand too, and then the drips, its gravity's going to make everything flow down. So you're going to have more drips and more stuff. That's why his feet are kind of soaked and it's dripping down his armor there. And you can see a lot of it in his mid-torso area here, and the spatter from an impact downward is spraying up onto him. You got to kind of keep that stuff in mind. You got to keep realism in mind when you're doing fantasy custom, comic book custom action figures. You got to keep that in mind, how that will work. And that's just common sense. It's also just kind of doing research of which way things would spray, which way things would go if it happened. How do you do all of these little dots? If you think I go like this and this and this and this and dot every single one of those little dots in different amounts, different brushes to get, you're crazy. You can't do that. So what you do is you use a stippling brush. I use a Citadel one. The head is a little bit thicker. So what I do is I will dip it in the paint, and once this tip is saturated, you can see I never got all of it off on the last time. I only use this for blood. I don't use it for anything else. I kind of flick it and just flick it onto the figure, and then you get this blood spray pattern. It's very random. You can't control it. It just sprays. So it's a flicking downward motion of me doing that on a regular basis in the areas that I want, and it leaves this spray in different areas where it looks like spatters occurred. It works really well. You can do that with other figures. I'm going to talk about how to do pus. I'm going to talk about how to do mucus and all of that with a different technical paint, but this is Ares. So that is how you do blood. That is how you do stuff. Keep in mind how you're positioning this. If I were positioning this way, it's the drips would be completely different, because it's not going to be spray like that. It would be dripping down the sword that way towards the lowest point of gravity. So depending on how you want to display your figure is how you should be painting your figure when you're painting blood. I'll answer any questions down below. Feel free to make comments, ask questions, leave any commentary. Check out the Komoda Customs Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter pages, and check out the rest of this channel for tips on how to do custom figures and how to do and just reviews in general of my customs and reviews of new Marvel Legends figures and other things I wind up randomly buying. Thanks for checking it out.